Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining tonight. I'm not sure if you had a drive home or if you're working from home, but it's great to have you here. So we do this meeting on an annual basis. It's a requirement for our chapter, but more than that, we do it to inform our members, especially members who haven't been with us for very long, to get to know a little bit more about the board, about our structure, about the things we do. So it's our annual meeting. It'll last about 25 minutes and you'll get a chance for a break before you talk to Dr. Wayne here in a while. He gives his presentation. So thank you again, everyone. Next slide.
Maybe.
Ready.
I'm trying. There we go. Sorry.
Okay. You may have already seen this at our website, but as a chapter, we do have a mission and a vision statement. So it's really our mission is to advance the practice and profession of project management. And our vision, of course, is to be recognized as a source of project management knowledge and expertise. We were actually founded in June 5th, so we're almost to our anniversary again, 1998. It was Barbara Malone that was one of the people that was our charter members and started the chapter. She started with 35 members. And you can see we're a 501c6. It means we're not for profit. We occasionally do make a profit, either accidentally or on purpose, but our general rule is to be a nonprofit and provide value back to our members. Next slide. Especially if we get into more of the detailed information. If you have questions, Cheryl, would you like them to go ahead and just put it in the chat and we can answer it towards the end? Is that the plan?
We can. I am monitoring the Q&A, so yep, I will watch for that.
Okay, awesome. Yep. So, and this is our value proposition here, and you'll also see this shown at our website. We want to be relevant, provide timely information, help with exam preparation. We have boot camps and things like that, and local networking opportunities. So in this value stream, we talk about 3 different sections here: promotions, boot camps, and programs. So promotions, you'll get through social media. You get added value as we are a member of the Chamber of Commerce for both Boise and Meridian. And that is a great value. When they have networking meetings and things like that, you're able to attend for free because we're members. We also are in association with Fisher's Technologies and work with them on their Tech Expo. It's been a really good partnership for us. And then you can see our boot camps. Many of you on the phone are probably familiar with those, have attended them, have benefited from them. So they're a great way to go ahead and get your certification and network with other people that are looking for that certification at the same time you are. And then programs, and we can talk a little bit about this Professional Development Day, especially. We had delayed because of the virus, so it's become an annual event for us. We've typically been holding it in March. Now we'll be holding it in August, and determination to be made if it's virtually in person or if it needs to be postponed again. So that's currently kind of simmering on the back burner. Right, Janelle?
Yes, that is correct. Sorry, looking for my unmute. Yes, correct.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. And then just even attending these kind of events, we like to have it in person because then you get to do a lot of networking and things like that, but we can't do that right now. So we'll continue with these type of online presentations as well as Lunch and Learn. And we've got Jennifer Ellis on the phone with us today. She's been working on the Lunch and Learns for quite a while now. And I asked her to just give a brief statement about the type of things we do at Lunch and Learn and how it adds value to you. What is a Lunch and Learn versus a networking meeting? Jen?
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi. We provide Lunch and Learns 10 months out of the year. We take a break in July and August. It's always the second Wednesday. And we have typically them at the Banner Bank building downtown, but we had our first one online for May. It's an hour and a half of time, so you get 1.5 continuing education credits. And so those are the people who already have their accreditation or their certification and they want to help with their continuing education credits. But it's also an opportunity for people who haven't gotten certified yet to network and meet other people and just learn more about project management. And so not only do you get to have the 1.5 credit for attending, if you are the one giving the presentation, you get credit for all the time that you put into your presentation and the hour of your presentation. So it's a really good use of time. I found it to be highly valuable. I think others share it where they're not interested in ever taking the exam again and they would really like to use those continuing education credits. So it's a really big carrot for a lot of people. You know, I've been impressed that about half the people show up that register, and we typically have about 20 people at a time. But the webinar that we had, or the online version that we had in May, we had 39 people show up, which was pretty cool. So I think that kind of tells us something for the future. We'll see if maybe that holds even after we find ourselves getting through COVID-19. I think that's a good summary. And
That's
it can be any topic under project management. I've seen all sorts of things, from planning events to how to impress your boss to, I mean, I've seen all sorts of things. Agile.
Thank you, Jen. It's been great working with Jen on this. So we actually worked together at HP for a number of years. So we knew each other previously in a different career life, right, Jen?
That's
Yes.
right.
So thank you for all you do. Lunch and Learn's been very valuable. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, ready for the next slide. Thank you. Okay, Janelle's going to talk a little bit about recent elections and how the cycle of the elections go. For instance, you see new board members. You don't see VP of marketing in there because we're not on that cycle right now. Janelle, go ahead and pop in there.
All right. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Yes, our year runs from July 1st until the end of June. So during this time, April, May, we have elections. Half of our board. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay.
We're still here.
Okay, half of our board rolls off and the other half stays on. So as you can see, we have new board members that will be coming on board July 1st, and they are with us tonight. So we have Rebecca Tomic, who will be our new Vice President of Finance, David Wilson, who will be our Acting Vice President of Professional Development. Tanisha Townsend will take over from Craig Hardesty as Vice President of Programs, and then Deborah Kotnick will take over as Vice President of Membership. Next block of names are board members that are currently on the board but are transitioning to their new roles. I will be taking over from Vicki as the president starting July 1st.
Yay.
Colleen Sollers will be president-elect, and then Vicki will move to the past president position. So the president track is a 3-year term. You start out as president-elect, president, and then past president. Members that will be leaving us as board members, but not leaving our chapter and will still be actively involved with us, are Laura Jean Rispens. She was our past president. Walter Davies is previous Vice President of Professional Development. Craig Hardesty will be rolling off as VP of Programs, and Rod Reed will be rolling off as VP of Membership.
And Janelle, I do want to give a comment right there. I think we've got Laura Jean and Craig on the phone. I don't think we have Rod. I want to give them a sincere thank you for their years of service and all the efforts, hours, and everything that they've put into supporting the board and as long-term members as well. So Laura Jean and Craig, thank you very much.
Yes, agreed. Thank you.
So much appreciated.
Yep. Thank you, Vicki. All right, next slide, please. Maybe.
There we go.
All right, great. Okay, so this is how organizationally we are structured. So you can see the top row is the president track. So past president, president, and president-elect. The next line is all of our VPs of their respective work streams, if you will. I won't read all of those names because I just did that. But what's cool about our board is each of the VPs can form their own work streams or their own sub-teams to help them accomplish all of the work that needs to be done in their area of responsibility. So you can see under Cheryl, she has quite a team under the communications. And we have George on the phone with us, Scott Jarrow and Keith Bevan. And then we have an open spot on the communications team for 2 volunteers to fill those roles. This is a very important work stream, if you will. VP of Communications, Cheryl, manages all of our websites, all of our communications, and it's a big role. So I would have to say thank you very much to Cheryl and for the great team that she has formulated, because it does take more than one person to manage all of this. Rebecca is VP of Finance. And then we have Karen Hardesty, VP of Marketing, and she has a sponsorship lead, Michelle Marshall. So they work very closely together. And then Deb Kotnick has Michael Brown, who is the volunteer lead, meaning that Michael will work with Deborah on all of the activities that we have for volunteer activities. Things are outside of our normal lunch and learns and outside of our dinner meetings. Michael will head up all of our extracurricular activities. David as professional development, he's got Jen, of course, for lunch and learns. And then Remy, I don't know if Remy's on the phone or has joined us, but Remy is our Education Foundation liaison. So he manages anything that we do with the PMI's Education Foundation. And one of the big events that we do under Remy's leadership is the Future Cities. And we always try to bring in the Future Cities finalists that are local here to Boise into our professional development day. And so you'll want to stay tuned for all of that. But it's a great opportunity for that student team to present the great work that they have done. And that's under Remy's leadership. And then we have a military liaison, Stephen Hill, who works with our military members. And then we have our boot camp leads, Chris Eden. And he will be working with David to work on our boot camps that we'll be pulling together for the next year. Under VP of Programs, another very important area where it does require teams to pull off all of our dinner meetings, and that's Aaron Hutchison and Ben Rogers. So they'll be joining the Tanisha's team. So that's how our board works. It's not just the board members. There are many other people. They're not all named here, but there are many other people that help us pull off our events and help us stay organized and deliver great benefits to you as members. I think that's
Thank
it.
you, Janel. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. So here's a screen with a little bit of information about our board functions. I won't read it for everyone here. I'll go ahead and let you take a look at them and see what you think. Basically, it's the area of responsibilities that are highlighted for each one. And some of that Janel just covered. For instance, VP Professional Development, you just on the last slide, PMI Education Foundation and things like that. But if you decide in the future you want to join the board, we've also got job responsibilities information out at the website that goes into more detail than this. So those are basic positions right there. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so while our board meetings are a lot of fun, you're welcome to join anytime you want. They're not private meetings, especially if you're thinking about becoming a board member in the future, or if you just want to understand the details of what we do as a board, you're welcome to join. They're held the second Wednesday of each month from about 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And until further notice, they'll be held virtually. Let me know on a personal level. Send me an email if you'd like it, president@pmiwic.org, if you have questions specific to the board meetings. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are some of our stakeholders. And one didn't get added in the most recent update. I want to point out in the not-for-profit organizations, we did an event in December. We're going to be doing more with volunteerism in the Valley. So we did an event where we had an online contribution to the Idaho Food Bank. And we also had a collection barrel at one of our meetings. And that was a fun thing to pitch in. It's amazing the amount of work they can do with a small donation. In the military realm, we work with the Wyakin Warrior Foundation. They're over on Broadway. They do an amazing job supporting military in our area, especially getting them out of the military world and learning how to use their cross-functional skills and to speak in terms that we would use in the Treasure Valley in project management instead of how they use their project management skills in the military. And Janel pointed out Future Cities a little bit. It's 5th through 8th grade students. It's a fantastic event at BSU. Hundreds of kids down there have literally built a future city depending upon the theme of the year. So you're welcome to join us at that next year. That's a super fun event. You can even help volunteer as a judge for that event. And then in our professional community, we like to interact with the Agile community and MPUG. I think that we'll try to do more of that this coming year. It's something that we've maybe struggled a little bit trying to find the time to do that. And then social networks, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And we have a couple of strategic partnerships, both with Experis and Tech Systems. You may have heard of them or have not. They're global staffing companies that we'd like to work with. At any point in time, and it could be just this moment, there's people within our chapter that are unemployed for whatever reason. And a lot of times they're able to go through some of these staffing companies and get either long-term or short-term work. So that's been very helpful to have that partnership. Then, as I said before, we are chamber members, so that can be an important thing for you to remember. In businesses, we have people in our chapter that work for businesses that are like 5 people, and then we have other ones that work for like St. Luke's that have like 20,000 employees, if I remember what I heard last. So we're really across the Treasure Valley with small to medium and large businesses. So there's always good networking when we can have on-site meetings, or even just, let's say you worked at Micron and you've been laid off and you want to go to HP or vice versa. We've always got people that work at these different companies that are members that you could interact with, that you could learn more about that company. And then off in the right-hand corner is about the different types of certifications, and you'll probably see more information on that later in the slide set, if I think we got included. So let me know if you have any questions concerning these stakeholders. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. And Colleen, I believe Colleen is on the phone. Do you have time or want to talk to anything about our financial report?
Well, sure, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Colleen, I'm the current VP of Finance. Transitioning to the president-elect role starting in June or July, right? So this is what you're seeing here is our current balance of accounts. We have 3 accounts at Idaho Central Credit Union, and our primary checking and operational account, the balance is standing at $43,038 and some change as of April 30th. We have a small share savings account, $1,112, and we have a money market interest-bearing account, which we're required by our bylaws to maintain a certain level of reserves to cover at least 3 months of operating expenses, and that's sitting at $28,811. And we have a small cash on hand that we use to give change at our events. So our total assets here is $73,075.50 as of April 30th. We use this money to put on many of the programs that that you just heard about, especially boot camps and of course our monthly dinner meetings. But since those are going to be held, well, we're going to move many of them to a virtual format, so things will be changing. We won't be getting as much income from that, nor will we have as many expenses that you know, we will incur for covering those events. You go to the next slide, please, Cheryl. I just want to show a trend line here. You know, we track our balance of accounts starting in 2004 is when we first started keeping track of it, I guess, way before my time. I came on board in this role in 2016. And in my tenure, you see that that up and to the right hockey stick trajectory, we've really increased our member base over the last 4 years since I've been here. I think we were in the 300s, mid 300s when I came into this role 4 years ago, and here we are today, up into, you know, well beyond 600. So that's partly due to, you know, a lot of people moving to the Boise Treasure Valley, and a lot of people know the value of the PMP and are joining our chapter and getting benefit out of it. So wonderful, wonderful results there. That's all I have on the financials.
Thank you, Colleen. Colleen's been in this role for a few years now. She's done an awesome job. So she does a lot of the work with the tax. She has to do work with audits and things like that. She puts a significant amount of time into helping us balance the budget and create a budget. So each person involved here, for instance, David Wilson will have his specific budget around professional development and things like that. So it's a significant effort. So Colleen, I want to appreciate all the time you spend in this particular role before you even move on to the president-elect. Thank you again.
Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you. And David's with us. He's new to us, so he may not have even seen this slide set, but this is about professional development and the types of credentials that we've got. You can see a significant increase in over time, especially around the PMP certification. So look at where we were even in 2012 compared to where we are now. We've almost doubled over a short period of time. So it's been significant. So David, welcome to our team. We look forward to all the things that you'll be doing with us over your role over the next couple of years.
Hey, thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm also looking forward to working with everybody on the team, and especially Jennifer. I think we got a lunch and learn in June that we might need to talk about. So I'm shooting you an email right now as we're talking. But, yeah, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. So if you do have questions about certification, go ahead and connect with David and he'll be able to help you offline. Thank you. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. And I don't think we have Rod on, or did Rod end up joining after all?
I am here.
You are here, Rod?
I am.
Awesome. Do you want to go ahead and talk to this slide then? I didn't get to talk to you ahead of time.
Sure. Hopefully I don't have an echo there. I do have an echo. Hang on just a second.
I think Rod's done a great job, especially with retention. That's something that we had a challenge with for quite a long time, was retaining members. They'd come in, go to a boot camp, take the test, pass the exam, stay with us for like a year, get some PDUs, and then kind of jump off. They didn't find as much value in it. So Rod's made a significant change to our retention over the time that he's been in this chapter. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Vicky.
All the welcome letters you do, the pins, and etc. He does a lot to support members. If you have questions about membership as a whole, go ahead and get with Rod offline. Thank you. Thanks, Rod.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, it's a wrap. Thank you for your membership and your service to PMI and to the local chapter. So PMI Global has gone through a big change over the last year. They've kind of reinvented themselves. They're marketing the way that they're starting to do evaluations on a worldwide basis. So you may have seen that out at the main PMI Global site. So we do appreciate you being here tonight. I want to make sure that you had a few minutes to get in a quick break before we start with our regular meeting. And Dr. Wayne, thanks for being here, and Cheryl for working with him to get this put together, and for the next meeting coming up at 6 o'clock on the dot.
So Vicky, since we do have a couple of minutes, do you want to open it up to general Q&A at all?
I think we're good. I want to make a little bit of a break time here for people who need a quick break before the other meeting.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks to all the board members here and for their interaction during this annual report out. We appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Vicky. Appreciate that. All right.
Break time.
Take 5.
So Wayne, if I make you the presenter, are you good with putting up your slide deck just as background while we wait?
Absolutely.
I will do that. Okay, it is all you.
All right.
Okay. All right. So Wayne, for this one, I'm going to go ahead and take myself off camera. And I think you and Craig will probably be the two folks who will want your webcams on for this next presentation, unless Craig's going to hand the ball to maybe some other folks to speak to their slides. Does that sound good? Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'll probably go away, Wayne, once you start talking. But I thought I just turned my webcam on. There we go.
There you are.
I don't know about this. Let's get over here. Oh, the other way, other way. There we go. My sunburn is showing.
Yeah, looks like you got a little sun.
I was out there. I can't stay out there very long.
So it looks like we do have, I was looking through the list of all of our folks. So we're shy one person. I thought we were supposed to have 16 panelists. Let's see. So we have Craig and Dave. Okay. All right. Well, I think we've got most everybody here. Awesome. Attendees are at 33. So guys, 5:58. So we'll give everybody till just after 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So for the audience listening in, thank you so much for attending tonight. And thanks to Vicky for giving us a few minutes of a break here so everyone can get situated, because this is going to be a great presentation. So we want you to get in, get comfy, and get ready for some great discussion and great information that's about to come your way. I feel like I should have had some elevator music or something playing
I
in
know.
between.
Make a note.
Yeah, right.
Cat videos.
Oh gosh, right? Herding cats. There you go. Love it.
So let me see if I can start sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne, for putting yours up just to have something in the background there. I appreciate that.
Wayne, I think you have to make me a presenter.
Or I can do that as well. Let me just jump in, Craig. I thought maybe you could grab that, but no worries.
I don't have it.
Okay, no worries. There you go.
There. Show my screen. And then I can relinquish my power once I
Awesome.
have it. All right. Throw this up here. Okay, should we start?
Okay, yep, I can see your PowerPoint.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. We actually have a really good turnout. I guess you prefer to see me virtually rather than in person, but I'm not offended too much. I understand. So typically on these our event nights, dinner, networking, whatever we want to call them, we go through some slides, talk about our just various things that are going on with the VPs and the different programs that we have. So we have our typical slides. It's always a funny thing to follow the annual meeting because there are a lot of the same slides. So Rod, I don't know if you got your microphone fixed, and I didn't know if you have anything to say about these, but I will let you jump in if you would like.
No, thank you, though. Appreciate the opportunity. The numbers speak for themselves. We've had great retention. We've continued to grow. So I'm very happy about how we've, over the last couple of years, hopefully we have made membership very relevant for folks.
I know these are great numbers. You know, kind of gotten spoiled because they keep going up. And I think you said the retention, I can't quite see it because it's being hidden, is in the 70s, 70 something.
That's right, 74% for the last month.
Yeah, so great. And I actually, Cheryl put a few slides in here. We have 33 new members, so I don't think you need to read them all, but we've put them all on slides. So this is from February, March, April, and May. So there's a lot of new members. Again, I don't know what else there's to say about that, but here are the February folks, followed by the March, April, and May folks. Do want to note that if you're wondering why people are in bright blue, we just went through and actually, again, Cheryl went through and highlighted the people who had signed up for tonight's webinar. So these people are probably on the line and attending tonight. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being new members. All right. Oh, and we have anniversaries. See, we haven't met in so long that we have all these people now that we have to show for our happy anniversary. This is our first year anniversary, folks. There's a bunch from February, March, April, and May. May was a big month for joining PMI. And Cynthia, thanks for being here. And then we also have a good chunk of 5-year folks, 10-year folks, and 15-year folks. So again, this is exciting. So this is part of the retention that we've been experiencing, and it's great when they have been. Some of you guys have been around for 15 years. That's a good number. All right.
And Craig,
Yeah.
so you see the people highlighted in blue are people that might be on this call tonight?
Correct. They're the ones that had signed up for the call.
Awesome. So I wonder if in the 15-year we have Lauren, Leanne, or Laura, any one of those guys on the phone.
They're giving us technical challenges. We already have enough technical challenges.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Hopefully they'll be on. Congratulations, everyone.
Yeah. So I don't know if we can open that up. I don't think we can, Vicky, but
Yeah, I think we can, but
yeah. Thanks for being here. We're gonna figure out. All this is really new to us, so thanks to Cheryl and her team for figuring all this out. But if there are bumps, guys, just be gracious. All right. Hey, I'm going to turn this over to our VP of Publicity to talk a little bit about our Facebook group. So, Karen, are you out there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay, great. Sorry, no picture. I don't have a video. I'm on my phone, but just wanted to just let everyone know that we have a new Facebook group. I think we mentioned this in the past, probably within the last several months, but we've still been in the process of getting it set up, making sure we get it launched properly. So you should see more information about this coming up during the summer months, but feel free to go out and search our Facebook group. If you're a Facebook member, you can request to join. I'll be honest, right now we don't have a whole lot going on there. Like I said, we're still in the process of setting that up, but you should see some more content and engagement in that group in the coming months.
All right, great. Thanks, Karen. I know that Karen and her team have been really focusing on the publicity, marketing, as well as just kind of getting the chapter engaged and things like this. So that's great. All right, this is kind of the typewriter slide, but and this is my slide. Coming up in June, we got the June events. Basically, two things are planned for June. Jen talked about the Lunch and Learn, and that is on for June 10th. And Jen, was there anything else you want to talk about, or was that actually we may have a new group of folks here? Do you want to just talk a little bit about what's happening in June? you on the spot. Find your mute button.
I was trying to unmute, sorry. And I'm at home with kids. I just drove home from Sun Valley and my kids are running around. So you might hear something, I don't know. Yeah, we do have a speaker, actually, one of our comm people, George, I believe is going to be presenting. He's in the works of pulling that together for us.
I will, we'll let you go. But thanks for doing that. And those of you who have attended Lunch and Learns know the value of those, how good they are. And actually, last month was a virtual event that was very well attended. So I think that there is a lot of value to offering these in a virtual setting, as well as face-to-face. So the other date to watch out for in June is June 24th, which is our June event for, would be our networking event or our dinner event. And it is just like the Lunch and Learn, the final event of the year before the summer break. So that part of the year, first half of the year. And I just put down, will they be virtual? Probably. But we're going to be watching that, and we'll probably end the spring season with a virtual event. But there'll be more to come, more details, so stay tuned. Appreciate you guys all finding your way to this meeting. Knowing when we got our invitations out and everything. So appreciate you guys signing up quickly and attending. It was great to see. So thanks for that. All right. Tonight, giving you permission to feel. We have a presentation on emotional intelligence in the workplace. This is being presented by Dr. Wayne Rysavy. I gotta get that way. And he's going to help us learn how to understand and utilize emotions that will facilitate more meaningful discussions, better manage conflicts, and improve relationships with others by giving ourselves permission to feel. And for those of you who aren't here just for the sake of learning, it is worth one PDU after this, and aligns with the strategic and leadership elements of PMI Talent Triangle. And we'll provide the information about how you do that after the presentation. So hang in for that. So in way of introduction, Dr. Rysavy is a doctor. He earned his doctorate from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with a dissertation exploring ways that social media facilitate the spread of imagery online and the often negative consequences diffusive global sharing poses for individuals, authority figures, and institutions of authority. He currently works at the City of Boise's Office of Community Engagement as the Communications Manager for the Planning and Development Services Department. And he currently, his current work includes collaboration with Boise State aimed at improving community engagement and managing localized conflicts through restorative practices. So I'm excited to have him here, and Wayne, it is all yours. If I can figure out how to hand this off. There you go. I didn't figure it out, but I bet Cheryl did. All right.
Oops. Jumped ahead there. All right. Well, thank you for that introduction, Craig. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for being here tonight. It's exciting to deliver a talk, even at a distance, but something that is also so important to us while we are at a distance and also in person. And I think that that's really the true beauty of emotional intelligence. And that's why I titled the talk Permission to Feel. And we'll explore the deeper aspects of that as we go through the presentation tonight. But I really want you to get into the mindset of thinking about what it is to feel emotions and how it is that we often are more superficial in our relationship to them in our professional roles, but also in our personal lives. So as Craig introduced, I have a background in communication and an academic background, and my interest in emotional intelligence really stems from the work that I've done in academia as well as at the city to try to manage relationships in the projects that I'm involved in as a communication manager. And that's where I see emotional intelligence really coming into play. It's a skill set that is tied to leadership. It's a skill set that is very much tied to relational success. And it's also a skill set that can be learned. It's not an innate ability. It's something that you can constantly engage with, practice, and grow through. And I want you to keep that in mind as we move through this presentation too. So with that said, I am going to toss this question out there and have you answer a poll to get some light engagement on this at the start. So are soft skills as important as technical skills in project management? And George, I believe, will be putting up the survey for that. And you should see it on your screen now and just select whatever answer makes the most sense to you. I want to make sure people get enough time to answer since it looks like we've got almost 40 participants.
I think we're up to about 80% voting, so we're good.
Good.
Okay, I think we're done. I'll close the poll.
Great. "100% yes." Well, that's awesome. Great. Yeah. I mean, I'm so glad that you're attending it to better understand how these skills are as important as the technical skills that we bring to our projects and that we bring to our roles. And that is what inspired me to really develop this talk around that, to help you enhance your skills, not only to be better managers, but to be better leaders, and maybe to even be better partners in your relationships or to be better friends, because all of those skills are translatable even beyond project management. So I like to think of emotional intelligence as a superpower. And I say that because I really think that it is underutilized in our society. We tend to look at it, as I said earlier, more superficially. But in actuality, if you can identify your emotions, if you can regulate them, and you can identify them in others and help them identify, regulate, and manage them, you have a superpower. And it's not manipulation. It's actually about being able to help to get them to where they need to be in a difficult situation, or in being able to process different tasks or initiatives that might be difficult or confusing. So I really want you to remember that as we move forward too. The other thing too is that emotions, like many things in life, are bids. I call them bids, borrowing the term from John Gottman from the John Gottman School, which does a lot of study on research and on relationships. Bids are anything that, say like the clothing that you wear, or if you dye your hair different colors frequently, they're a bid or an invitation to learn something more about another person. And we're constantly exposed to bids on a daily basis. It's whether or not we take up that offer and engage deeper. In my mind, emotions are much the same. It's just we have to explore them ourselves a little bit more, but also be open to those in others as well. So we'll really dig into that as a part of our exploration today. But first, it's one thing to actually know about the skills, it's another thing to practice them. So here I have a comic from Dilbert that you can see. The boss is thinking, criticize the behavior, not the person, and says, the email you sent to everyone looks as if it had been written by a monkey on crack. Just to be clear, you are terrific, but everything you do is exactly what a moron would do, right? So not a lot of emotional intelligence here. Now, clearly recognizes the skill, right? You want to criticize the behavior, not the person. You want to be able to identify emotion. But if you're not actually practicing the skills, if you don't have the familiarity to properly intonate, to identify your own emotions and how you're conveying in tone, or how the other person is receiving that, you will be missing the mark in terms of emotional intelligence. we wanted to show a video too about herding cats, but it didn't quite work out for our digital seminar. But if you Google it, you'll find it. So tonight we will go through 3 content areas that I think really focus our exploration into emotions and how we can manage them through conflicts, and then how we can grow as a part of that. So first, how are you feeling? This is a question we often ask other people. It's a question that we often treat as lip service to. You know, when someone asks you how you're feeling, you often say, I'm okay, or I'm good. But we don't really ever get to the deeper level of feeling. And sometimes that's with people we're even closest to in our lives, whether that's family or friends. And I want us to really think about that for a moment. How are you feeling is an incredibly important question. It's an invitation to really understanding how you are handling the situations around you. And I think arguably in a time like COVID-19 that we're in, getting closer with our feelings, being able to assess why we're feeling what we're feeling, and then being able to manage those emotions, whether that's in our personal lives or in the workplace, helps us better relate to others and ourselves. So really start to untangle that question a little bit more and recognize it as, again, an invitation or a bid to dig in a little bit more. I also like to share a short story here too. I think it's important to remember that when we treat this superficially, sometimes we're not willing to open ourselves up to others. And I had a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill who was he was an interpersonal communication professor, and he was very avid about identifying with people and working through their feelings. And people knew that about him, but his closest coworker on the institutional review board would often see him on campus and kind of just ignore him. And one time, Larry asked him, how are you feeling? And he was like, fine. And then he didn't return it back to him. And he was like, well, F you. And he just kept walking away. And so again, I share that example with you because there are moments where we should receive that invitation and try to engage with it a little bit more. So all that's to say that emotions are information. They're key to identifying what is going on in someone's head. They're an opportunity to better understand where their head is at, what their motivations are, what their priorities are, right? Because they give us purpose, priority, and they focus our thinking. And in truth, they really motivate us to act. So when you're angry, maybe it's that something didn't go well in a project or at work, you might be motivated to do more or apply for other jobs. The anger has motivated you towards an action. And while it's a negative emotion, it can come with positive results. So it's not that there's just a simple dichotomy of positive or negative emotions, but rather that they facilitate action in a variety of ways that can serve us. So as we start to understand emotions a little bit more, we need to maybe assess our own skills with it. And so here on the following slides, I have 5 statements that I want you to self-evaluate yourself from a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 is very unskilled and 5 is very skilled. These are just simple statements for our self-test, and just answer with your first gut reaction as we do that. And then after that, we'll follow it up with a small survey to record the results on that. So we'll give you approximately 2 minutes to do this. Again, 1 to 5. And if you can't see them, I'll read them out just in case. Number 1 says, I am able to accurately recognize my own and others' emotions. Number 2 says, I'm aware of the causes and consequences of my own and others' feelings. Number 3 says, I have a refined emotional vocabulary. Number 4 says, I am skilled at expressing a full range of emotions. And number 5 says, I am skilled at managing my own emotions and helping others manage theirs. So go ahead and take another minute or so, tally up your score at the end, and then we'll do the survey. All right, if you haven't already done so, make sure to tally up your score for all 5 of those. And then George, I think we can probably put the survey up now. So within the range, identify what your score was.
Okay, it looks like the votes are starting to slow down. We've got about 65% participating, but it looks like we could post the results.
Sounds good to me. So it looks like the majority of you scored yourselves between the 16 to 20 range, and then the rest, it looks like we're in the 11 to 15 range, which I have to say seems fairly honest, although there is scientific research that suggests we do tend to evaluate ourselves higher with these sort of skills. Now, that's not to deny that you might have these abilities, but hopefully from the presentation today, we really delve deeper into things like having a refined emotional vocabulary and how that helps you in managing your emotions and that of others, as well as being able to express those full range of emotions, which I think are 2 categories where we kind of miss our opportunity to really grow and showcase our emotional intelligence. So we can jump back into the PowerPoint. So some perspective here. Emotional intelligence really connects to 4 major categories that I have for you on this slide: attention, memory, learning, decision-making, creativity, and relationships and health. Now, positive and negative emotions affect us in a variety of ways. It's very clear to us that sometimes positive emotions cause us to overlook things. So while positive emotions can make us feel good, there are times where positive emotions come with negatives. For example, if you're really excited and you're on a first date with someone, or you're feeling good about someone on your project team, you might overlook some of their flaws or challenging moments or weaknesses because you have a positive association with them. This is known as a halo effect, and it basically is like it sounds. You are viewing them in a golden light, and you cannot necessarily see negative aspects behind their work. So it's to say that not all positive emotions are perfect and helpful for us, just as not all negative emotions are bad for us. Sometimes negative emotions help improve our performance, for example. This is true, as I said before, with anger. It can motivate us to change or to take a new direction, as well as things like envy. Envy is something where if you can identify what the problem is, it's an opportunity to deeply assess what your needs are. Are you missing out on something in a project because you don't feel like your skills and talents are being utilized and you're envious of others? Again, it's an invitation to dig deeper, particularly when it comes to these 4 categories. Then positive and negative emotions hone our attention, memory, and focus when we are able to exercise our abilities in key tasks. In decision making, it is possible that negative emotions can help us be more critical and make more reasoned decisions. Like if we're editing, for example, on a document, it is scientifically proven that our attention is drawn to minute details that we need to catch, which kind of makes sense because I don't know about you, but if you've gotten project proposals that are 20+ pages long, it's not going to put you in a happy mood. So hopefully your negative reaction to it does help you get through it, and then you can have the positive reaction later to move forward. The same is true with creativity. It's not an innate ability necessarily, although some people do have some predisposition to be more creative than others. It's really about performance and effectiveness, and that's directly tied to your emotional level that you're engaging with in a moment, in a project, or in a relationship. In terms of creativity then, you have to try to bring yourself to a space where you're able to think about the projects that you're engaging with or the tasks you're engaging with a growth mindset. Dr. Carol Dweck, who wrote the book Mindset, talks about this, and it's really an important point to make here, and that's we tend to focus on a more fixed mindset in our work, which leads to negative reactions and negative emotions. It's where we view things as either or. I didn't get the promotion, I'm bad. I didn't get the task done, I'm bad, right? But when we view it in a growth mindset, we look at it as an opportunity for lessons and learning. And so instead of focusing on it in this negative category, we say, okay, I didn't get the promotion, but what did I learn from the process? Do I need to be a better writer and addressing my skills in communication? Is it that I don't have some of the skill set needed? And if not, how do I get that? Or was it something else beyond me? So when we shift our focus from one that's fixed to growth, it allows us to grow and be stronger and more creative. And obviously, I think that many of us here are well enough aware that when you're experiencing positive emotions in a relationship, it can improve your health, and that those that experience frequent negative emotions are typically have a tendency to be more depressed, to also self-isolate more, and also scientifically tend to die earlier. So another reason to really get good with your emotions. So here, I want to kind of move us into thinking about how emotions tie into conflict. And I want you to think of the very first word that comes to mind when you think of the word conflict. So get good on that, and George will put up the survey here real quickly. We just have it in a 5 categories, multiple choice answer.
Okay, it looks like the voting is slowing down again.
Okay.
Go ahead and close it and share the results.
Thanks. All right, so from what I can see, it looks like most people rated it negative at about 56-ish%, I think, a little small on my screen. And then next was neutral, which is interesting. So it's something that we're challenged by. I mean, conflict does not typically tend to resonate with us as something positive, right? So it's not surprising that most people are rating it negatively, but it is a little surprising that some people are rating it a little bit more neutrally too. And that gives me hope. That shows me that you're aware that emotions can come into play and maybe lead to something a little bit more positive. So that brings me to some of the points that related to conflict. We tend to view conflict negatively, and that's across most cultures, although there are cultural differences where it can be broadened out. Perceptions about conflict are shaped by culture. In fact, different cultures have different views about it. Obviously, in an American individualistic culture where things are competitive and win-lose, we tend to view it as a negative when we're in a conflict. It's an argument, it's painful, there's hurt feelings, people feel harmed, right? In other countries, however, with different values, conflict is actually rated more positively. In New Zealand, for example, where they practice restorative justice and restorative circles, it's viewed as an opportunity to engage. It's seen as something more positive. And restorative practices in this case tend to be positive because they give victims a chance to speak, and they give voice to unheard issues that occur in conflict that allow people to be equal and level. So we can see how we can shift away from the negative side across cultures. finally, I think a beautiful example comes out of South Africa. They have an analogy for it in the sense of calling it a rainbow, and they summarize it up in the word Ubuntu, which means I am because we. And basically the point is that if we look at conflict on a spectrum like a rainbow, we can see multiple ideas, multiple solutions, multiple opportunities to engage. There's no one color to the rainbow that makes it work, but it's all of those colors that bring it together to make it something beautiful. So we need to shift away from some of our negative mindsets and hopefully move into some of those more neutral and positive ones to better manage those conflicts. And the key thing here is that emotions are often viewed as problematic or negative in conflict, but in actuality, they're the key to unlocking what's at the heart of the conflict. So it's important to better understand them for yourself and for others in order to move forward and develop from the conflict and grow. So I want us to take a moment before we dive into this next slide. I want you to visualize a kid in a local grocery store about to check out with their mom or dad, and they see that candy and they really, really want it. And the parent says, no, can't have it. What happens? That kid starts screaming, crying, I want my candy, I want my candy. The cashier's like, hey, we got to give the kid the candy. The parent's like, no. The kid explodes even more, starts stomping up and down, I want my candy, right? Now, obviously, you know, the kid is going through a severe emotional reaction, and we can't necessarily say it's bad parenting either way, because, you know, you want to make sure your kid's taken care of, but you also don't want them getting obesity from eating too much candy. So I bring up that story because it relates to how we understand our emotions and how our emotions develop and how we develop rational thinking skills over time too. What you see on the screen here is known as the hand model of emotion and conflict. And here, what I'm drawing out for you is that when we're children and as we're developing, the first part of our brains to develop, the amygdala, is associated with major emotions: anger, fear, anxiety, excitement, right? We tend to live in that emotional world throughout our childhood and into our teens. We're operating very heavily from that. So our central part of our brain, the part of the brain that develops first, is emotion-based. It's our primal, baser reaction to things. Over time, from our teens and into our adulthood, however, our prefrontal cortex develops more thoroughly, and it allows us to make more rational decisions as we manage our emotions. They're not separate from each other physiologically, biologically. They're one in part with each other. It's just how well developed is our prefrontal cortex in helping us manage our emotions. So when you think of some of the people you work with, or when you think of some of the situations where maybe you've dealt with customers and they come off hot and angry, you can remember that they've flipped their lid, right? You may have said something like, you seem frustrated. Boom, the lid has flipped, right? Getting them back to rational requires us to practice better emotional intelligence skills and practice key techniques that can help us de-escalate that pain or that tension or that perceived harm or threat and bring them back to a state of rationality. And that's what we're going to jump into next. So this model is known as the SCARF model, and it is really a simple model that I think will help you in everything that you do in project management and in your relationships too. There are 5 categories in front of you: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. Now the point here is that we're often confronted with conflicts where one or more of these categories are at play. And if we can identify them, we can often get to the emotion behind it and hopefully move towards a reward response and away from a threat response. So status, this model, by the way, is by David Rock. Status pertains to our position, our tasks, or our abilities. And when we feel threatened by this, it's usually because we lack a sense of what it is that we're able to do in our work, or what our authority is related to our work. And when threatened, one of the ways that we can maybe move that towards more of a reward response is providing frequent feedback to people, letting them know what their status is on a project, letting them know that they are praised for the work that they're doing. At the city of Boise, for example, they've implemented a system called Connect Boise, where part of the recognition is frequent praise for the work that you're doing, not every day like you're entitled, but more so quarterly to make sure that you're recognized. And there's a requirement for managers to make sure that they're paying attention to things that you've done in major projects and to really praise you for that, not necessarily monetarily, but to really recognize the value of your work. When it comes to certainty, it's really about having an awareness of your purpose or your objectives or your expectations. So when this is threatened, it's because we don't have a sense of predictability. And we want to be able to identify predictable outcomes and expectations. So to move it towards a reward response, you would de-escalate it by making it clear through routine check-ins or through frequent updates that, or even through an outlined mutual agreement that there are certain objectives that can be met and that you'll follow through on them. So it moves us more towards a reward response. Next is autonomy. That's the ability to exercise our personal control in projects or in events. And here, this is threatened when people feel like they're being micromanaged. And I would argue that autonomy is probably one of the areas where people feel conflict the most, especially in project management, right? You want to be very careful to make sure the project's moving forward successfully, but it's a fine line to not get so in the weeds and on someone that you're kind of becoming a monkey on their back and micromanaging them. That will immediately elicit a negative threat response from them. To move toward a reward response, we want to move towards trust and judgment and suspending judgment and really trying to delegate tasks out if we notice that someone is having difficulty. It's not to delegitimize their autonomy, but to make sure that they can still practice it as fully as possible without feeling hampered. Next is relatedness, which should be pretty clear. It's about feeling safe and connected to others. On our project teams, we want to make sure we're fostering a sense of unity and collegiality. And it's really hard in virtual environments to do that. I'm sure many of you are experiencing that right now when you're at work and you're feeling like you're kind of an island to yourself and you're not really connecting with people in the ways that we would normally socially. So we're probably feeling a lot of that even just in our day-to-day lives now. So that's the threat of it. And virtually, it requires that we do a little bit more engagement of actually making overtures to reach out to people. To move towards reward, again, we'd want to have more regular interactions, but maybe even bonding activities that we do as a team. I know that Cheryl, in her work at the city, has done numerous bonding activities on our permitting and licensing project, bringing people together through shared games or even simple things like recognizing people for their continued efforts on a project that helps build a sense of unity. And just like we heard earlier tonight with Craig in his presentation. And last but not least is fairness. And this is pretty self-explanatory too. How fair or equal we think things are. The threat here is that we will quite literally almost flip our lid, right? If things don't feel fair to us, then we're likely to have a very negative reaction. Even if someone's being overly honest with us too, it might seem unfair. So what we're trying to do here when we move towards reward is really clarify mutual success, mutual goals, clarify roles, but also really try to maybe establish collaboration and clear expectations as a part of that. So this will come back into play later in the presentation, but if there's one important thing to take away, I definitely think it's this because it ties so closely with emotional intelligence. So I want you to take a moment to consider how you tend to respond to conflict. Now, given the poll results, it seems like many of us respond negatively, but what I'm asking here is, what is your preferred style to respond to conflict? Do you tend to be a little bit more avoidant? Do you tend to be a little bit more aggressive? Do you tend to fall somewhere in between? Really take a moment to crystallize what your tendency is in terms of responding to conflict. And trust, there is no judgment here. I just want you to consider it because it's a part of getting good with your emotions. Now, here we can see that our emotions, our conflict styles can be summarized in about 3 large categories. And we'll go over them briefly in the next couple of slides. But I want to make it clear that if you tend to fall into something that's more submissive, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And if you tend to fall in aggressive, it's not necessarily a bad thing either. It's rather a condition of our culture. It's a condition of our upbringing. It's a condition of what we've learned in our interactions with others over time. And it's okay to recognize it, because recognition is part of the first step towards moving to understanding, labeling, and then engaging towards something different. And that's part of the whole point of this presentation. So first, submissive. If you identify with any of these behaviors that are listed, it's okay. It's often considered more of an avoidant style, or one where people tend to be a little bit more of a martyr. And it tends to be gendered, at least in American culture and in some collectivistic cultures too. Women tend to be on the more submissive side, learning over time that women should not be, strong and should not be confrontational, right? And in certain organizations as well, they might be more gendered too. They might be more submissive too. I certainly think that middle management roles and sometimes certain positions in government, for example, might predispose you to being submissive toward others who are in a position of extreme authority. So again, it's okay if this is where you're at, but the key thing is to move towards your ability to speak for yourself, to identify your needs, concerns, and values openly, and to share them with others and not be afraid to do so. On the almost opposite end of that is aggressive. And I think we can probably think of managers that we've had who maybe have no problem expressing their feelings or needs, but don't have a really good way of recognizing those in others. And almost always has to be right and win in an argument. And again, this tends to be very gendered too, at least in American culture. It tends to be associated with men or a more masculine identity, but it can also be considered racial, and it can be considered cultural too. There are certain groups in our society that might feel like they have the authority to speak on behalf of others, right? And I say cultural too, because again, American compared to say a Japanese style is probably more aggressive compared to a less aggressive style. And again, certain organizations, I think, foster this too. Sports, for example, tends to foster an aggressive response. People in director positions sometimes foster a more aggressive response. So again, it's not bad, it's just recognizing what it is. Key thing here is to move us towards assertive. So this, when you're moving towards assertive, I chose a chess piece for this because it's about being strategic and how you engage with other people. It's really being able to use the different tools and methods of communication to satisfy your needs through a wide repertoire of skills that allow you to actually stand up for yourself, to defend your decisions, your purpose, but also to truly value your worth without letting others take that away from you, and yet still confirming them at the same time. So someone that's assertive is strategic in how they share information about themselves and how they are open with others, but also recognizing that they can listen to others and learn from them too. So the whole point then is to draw us closer to assertive. Now, one thing I do want to note here too, though, is that this still in our society, even today, does carry some gender biases too. It is possible, and many of you might experience this in your work as project managers, that it is possible that if you're a woman who's being assertive, you might still be labeled or come off as aggressive. And part of that is that our culture is still adapting to some of those changes. We have to remember that just because we prop something up as the ideal, like being decisive and being clear and direct, doesn't mean that there's been a wide acceptance for different people that fit within those roles or have those different conflict styles. So women, as they've gradually entered into higher positions of authority, have probably had to take on a more aggressive stance or a more assertive stance that comes off as aggressive because our cultural assumptions have predisposed us to assuming that they need to respond in more submissive ways. So I want to make that clear that if you're able to manage your emotions and you're able to use that repertoire of skills in a positive fashion, you're in the assertive category, and other people might be making assumptions, but it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's that there's deeper cultural elements that have to be untangled over time, and that's part of what this presentation should help you do too. The other thing too here is that this being assertive really is about having an awareness of yourself and other, and so that's the thing that I want us to remember as we move forward with all of this. So again, those are the three general styles for how we tend to respond and relate to conflict, and also how we identify with our emotions through them. So I want to bring us back to that question that I asked you right at the beginning. How are you feeling, right? And I've italicized you because, again, it's about getting to the heart of your emotions and how you are actually feeling. It's about identifying how you feel about things and to not treat it as superficial, but to be more curious about what you are feeling, what others are feeling, and to use these as opportunities for curiosity to learn about yourself and others, and to really make friends with your feelings. So now we can kind of turn our attention into some practical skills that we can use to really help us dig into our emotions to better manage our emotional intelligence with others. So listen to be heard. Listening is one of the easiest skills that you can practice, but one of the most difficult ones, I think, to implement. And I use this analogy to kind of help you through a couple of things. So use your ears, right? Your empathy, your attention, your reflection, and your ability to summarize. Now, a couple key things to take away from this. We're going to start with empathy, right? Empathy is a word that I think has been thrown around a lot, but some people confuse it with sympathy. So it's important to take a moment to untangle that a little bit. It differs from sympathy. Sympathy is when you are interacting with someone and they say, oh, gee, Cheryl, that must be really difficult, but hey, at least your project's still moving forward. When someone says something like that to you, even without the but in the statement, right? They're almost trying to paint a silver lining around what it is that you're feeling rather than engage with the feeling and your emotion and you. So it fosters an emotional difference. It might feel objective, but it doesn't convey any relational value. In other words, you basically just told the person, sucks to be feeling that, but hey, life goes on, right? Doesn't make you feel good. So what I'm hoping that you get from it is that it should be more of an invitation to be vulnerable, to try to take the perspective of another person, or at the very least, just foster a shared connection. Sometimes, for example, if you don't know the answer to someone that's feeling a negative emotion, they're feeling depressed, for example, sometimes just saying, hey, that's difficult, but I'm here and I'm glad you shared it with me is powerful enough, because you're not passing judgment and you're acknowledging how they feel and you're being a person and a space for them to share their feelings. So that gets us to the definition of empathy. It's the ability to understand emotions and a situation of another without agreement or judgment. It's simply being in that feeling with them and recognizing for that other person that feeling is okay and that it's good to share those emotions. Moving beyond empathy is our attending skills, our ability to focus our attention. So in person, we know how to do that. That's pretty easy. If we're strong communicators, if we're thoughtful communicators, we know that it requires to avoid distractions, to be present, to lean in, to really make sure that we're paying attention to the other person and we're not playing around on our phone, right? Now online, however, as we've been exploring most recently over the last couple of months, it's a huge challenge. And again, it's neuroscience and physiology that are coming into play. Our bodies, our minds, our brains are not predisposed to having to engage with people without the nonverbal contextual cues we would have in person. So it requires us to do more. And as difficult as it might be to sometimes have that camera on, I would strongly encourage you to do it because it allows you to attend better, to receive the information better. It's like when you had a professor or a teacher that told you, you can't take notes on a laptop. You have to take them by writing them down, right? You have to focus your attention, and in that process of doing it, you're able to better retain the information. It improves your memory. Part of it too is being able to speak slower. As ridiculous as it might sound, you want to try to insert more pregnant pauses and slow when you speak. Maybe not that slow, but definitely give people an opportunity to understand and better process the information, because again, with the lack of contextual cues, we need to be able to identify it through your voice, and that's where intonation and inflection become way more important than they ever have been before, because that is the key to understanding how you're feeling, what your initial reaction to something might be, and also how we can move forward from the emotions that we're sensing in that intonation and inflection. All the more, though, it encourages us to reflect and summarize more, which moves us into our next slides here. So I want us to take a moment to identify our emotions and really kind of start thinking about how it is that we understand emotion in our day-to-day lives, and really trying to assess what our emotional vocabulary is as well. Again, kind of back to that self-assessment that we talked about earlier. So I want you to take the next 30 seconds. You can self-time yourself. No one's going to check on you. There's no right or wrong here. List as many emotions or feelings as you can. So I'm not going to name any necessarily, but just name as many as you can in the next 30 seconds. And then after that, we'll bring up a quick survey that will allow you to kind of assess it on a scale. Again, no right or wrong answers here. Okay, hopefully you've taken about 30 seconds here to kind of drop the pen if you haven't already done so. And then George, I think you can bring up the survey. So just ballpark, how many emotions or feelings you were able to identify in that short time.
Okay, votes are still coming in.
All right, thanks.
Looks like we're slowing down a little bit.
That's okay. We're coming to an end soon. Got just a few more slides after this, and then we're done.
Okay, I think we're there. So close the poll and share the results.
Oh, there it is. Great, great, good. So it seems like many of you are probably very effective project managers to be identifying between 11 and 15. I think that's excellent range too. For those of you that scored 1 to 5, know that that's okay too, but it's also an opportunity to really dig into a deeper emotional vocabulary, because when you're able to dig into that, it gives you an opportunity to better understand yourself and others and foster an awareness of needs, values, or concerns. So we're about to talk about that here after George takes down the poll results. So what should be on your screen now is what is known as a feelings wheel. And I know it might sound a little silly, but when I talked earlier about that question, how are you feeling? I noted that it tends to be superficial in our reaction back to it, right? We tend to provide things like, I'm okay, or I'm good, or I'm happy, or I'm sad, right? But that is very superficial. It doesn't get us to the deeper heart of what we might be feeling. Are you sad because you feel like you're not connecting with other people? Well, then that's maybe loneliness, or maybe it's something deeper. It's much more negative. It's maybe something like isolation. By getting to the deeper elements of emotion in identifying feelings, we're better able to assess what we might need to get out of that situation in the case of isolation, or what our values are that might move us to a better position where we might be feeling greater happiness, or feeling more excited and proud of what we're doing while we're working at a distance, as the example goes. So the thing that I want us to take away with from the feelings wheel is that not only to move past our emotions, but to really dive deeper into how you share your feelings. And I note that because it's an invitation to be vulnerable. Many of you have maybe heard of the name Renee Brown. Dr. Renee Brown does a lot of research on vulnerability. And while we tend to assume that vulnerability is a weakness, she turns that on its head and says, no, it's a strength. Because when we're vulnerable, when we're identifying some of these deeper emotions in our relationships with others, regardless of just personal relationships, but in day-to-day life, in work, in school, in play, we are better able to connect with others. We are better able to foster positive outcomes and better decisions with others. And we're better able to create a more positive future on projects, on relationships. So really the thing to take away with from here is that it helps us be better with each other. And it is the key to untangling many of the conflicts that we confront too. So vulnerability is strength. So what that leads us to in reflection then is emotions, as I said before, are information. They're bids. And they're bids where you have an opportunity to investigate and interrogate needs, values, and concerns, but also to reflect back what you're hearing from other people in terms of content, feelings, and meaning. And you should try to reflect those emotions back as you are comfortable with other people. So related to all of this, I have some tips for how we reflect back carefully in terms of content, feelings, and meaning. And they can be summarized up in some tips in terms of questions and prompts for reflecting and summarizing that are up in front of you. So when you're confronted with people that might be very passionate or very coming in hot and heavy about something, and you're trying to make sure you've heard everything because you had a negative reaction to how they are talking about something, it's good to reflect back the content and say, I heard X, I heard Y, and I heard Z. Is that correct? Right? Simple, easy, can help de-escalate some of the tension. It's also important that when we're reflecting back feelings, that we not reflect back negative feelings with negative feelings. So wording is incredibly important. Rather than saying things like, well, what's your problem with blank on the project, right? It might be better to carefully take a deep breath, if you can do it while you're practicing your emotional intelligence, and say, what are your biggest concerns with this element of the project, right? The wording and moving away from associating someone with a negative emotion in that, like problem, will definitely help de-escalate some of the tension and conflict that could arise. One of my favorite prompts to use when confronted with some of these difficult situations, and I hope you bring into your repertoire, is help me understand, right? It's a good starting place. It shifts it away from being about you, the other person. You're saying, hey, invite me into your thinking when you say something like, help me understand. Closely related to that are the next two, and that's really after you've heard someone else's ideas and thoughts and they've proposed a position or they've proposed what they believe to be the best solution, you can say, okay, well, tell me about that a little bit more. What if we tried your solution? What do you think the pros and cons of that are? And what if we tried an alternative solution that we both are brainstorming or haven't thought of yet and can think about that? When we move into that, we engage the brain to be more creative in a positive way and engage in problem-solving skills. And that helps us manage negative situations. Finally, on that too, after you've developed some solutions, you can turn it back to the other person and through your emotional intelligence, encourage them to be involved by asking them which approach they would prefer. Now, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to go one way or another. It's just opening up the conversation to be more thoughtful and respectful of how they were feeling and to better manage the conflict and de-escalate it as a part of that. Finally, my favorite thing for reflection and summary is what Mark Brackett, who wrote the book Permission to Feel, where I borrowed my title from, he calls it a meta moment. Now, a meta moment can be done personally. It's where when you're confronted with a negative situation, you take a step back from it, you take a deep breath, you try to identify what the feeling is that you're feeling in response to a negative situation. You try to label what that feeling is, and then you evaluate whether you should express it and how you should express it, and you regulate it. In a group setting, it can be quite easy to simply, when you've gone down a rabbit hole and you're talking about something very technical where people are not involved on your team, you just take a step back and say, hey, can we take a moment to talk about how we're talking about this current issue or this current problem? it's a good way to level set it for everyone, for those that might feel like they're lost, for those that might be a little bit more quiet or possibly introverted, to give them an opportunity to speak up. And it's a good opportunity for you to take a breath and recognize where you're at in the work that you're speaking about or in the conflict that might be emerging as a part of your discussion. So again, I think all of these are good practical skills that you can take with you as you're managing projects. Finally, we can really practice great reflection and summary by recognizing that we can reconcile interests and not positions. So I have on this slide for you, and I credit my dear friend Ashley Orm-Nichols for this, an iceberg. When we think about conflicts and we think about positions, we tend to only see the tip of the iceberg. We tend to only see someone's position on a matter. But underneath that, far deeper and far greater, are the various interests that are motivating that position. And I strongly believe that when you're confronted with these emotions and conflicts, that you can find greater interests that align and move past positions. So to do that, you need to listen for SCARF. You need to listen for where they feel threatened in a situation. And that requires you to really identify with the emotions. So identify, is it autonomy that feels threatened? If so, how might the interests that I have satisfy their interests too? The key thing here is that there's numerous interests that can satisfy different seemingly conflicting numerous positions that could satisfy seemingly conflicting interests as a part of that. And even though we tend to view conflict negatively, one thing that I think we can take away is if we can start digging into interest and identifying where those key categories of conflict differentiation are, we can find more complementary interests rather than conflicting ones. It's typically not an either or in some of the work that we do, but a matter of being flexible in how things might get done or in managing expectations as a part of that. And when we shift our framework in that way, we can see how different interests come together to bring us together towards a common goal. So definitely keep that in mind as a part of this. So in total then, it's really about learning from and integrating these skills into the work that you do, into project management, into your day-to-day life, and in your relationships with other people. But I want to be very clear about something. Again, just like that comic at the beginning, it's one thing to be aware of these things and to know to critique the behavior, not the person, right? It's another thing to actually be skilled at it and do it. And to actually do it, if you're not as well equipped to do it, you need to prepare others for that change. Because if you try to do it overnight, it's not going to work. You're going to fail miserably, and you're never going to want to go back to it. You need to prepare others for the change by, in your work teams, for example, by saying, as we move forward on evaluations and feedback, I want to be more open about my feelings with you on some things, and I want you to be too. And maybe it's only one person on your team that you're a little bit closer with, but you're preparing them for the change so that they're not off-put by the box that they've put around you in terms of your reactions and feedbacks and the assumptions that they've already made about you. And to do that too, then, in selecting an appropriate person or situation, it will help you. It could even be as simple as practicing some of these techniques when you're at the checkout line with a cashier, right? But it takes continual practice. It takes recognition that there's going to be setbacks and failures, but it also requires us to recognize that we're able to learn and grow, and that competency isn't something that's static. It's something that's constantly evolving. It's dynamic. And so if you practice more and you have patience with it, you can get better at it. So that leads me to the conclusion. In true Renee Brown fashion, if we're recognizing that emotion and vulnerability is a strength and not something to be avoided, not something superficial, not weakness, it actually inspires courage, because if other people can see that you're willing to be open, honest, true to your feelings and your values, they will be inspired to do the same. When you have a team member that is willing to meet you as you are, and you can meet them as they are, it can truly be an act of courage that inspires others on your team to do the same. So courage is definitely courageous, and I encourage you all to really practice greater emotional intelligence through the different techniques that we've explored and talked about tonight. So thank you. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this, and I believe we're going to open it up for Q&A at this point before I leave you for the night.
Great, thank you, Wayne. And I think, Cheryl was going to have some open mic time, so to speak, at least open chat time. We do have a few minutes left, so if people want to use your chat function or ask a question function, we would take some questions.
This is Colleen. Can you guys hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Hi, Wayne. Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I am of Italian descent. And so therefore I tend to wear my emotions on my sleeve in my real life, and I struggle a lot in my professional life to try and really tamp that down. And one time recently I was so frustrated at work, I actually cried in front of my director. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm doing this. He was my new boss, and I was just so fed up. I couldn't take it anymore, and I broke down and I just started crying. And he was like, this is the first one-on-one I'm having with this guy, and it was totally unexpected. It just came out, And I didn't realize, I guess, that I had been under so much stress and how much it was affecting me until I tried to verbalize what was going on to a total stranger. And so I left that. I mean, he was very gracious, and he was very cool about it. But I left there thinking I just killed this whole relationship with my new boss, and I was kicking myself for weeks afterwards. And now what I'm doing is I'm overcompensating. I find myself, with my self-talk, just like, do not do that ever again. So anyway, what are your thoughts on going so far as to cry in front of your boss at work?
Oh yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, Colleen. I think it takes a lot of strength to even do that, because it's a moment of vulnerability. But I think something like that shows us a few things, and I think you almost spoke to some of it in your response there. It shows us that there's an opportunity for us to first identify our emotions a little bit more. And in one of the resources that you can check out at the end of the slides, Mark Brackett talks about, he calls it the ruler method. Each letter stands for something. But I think what you can see there is if you can recognize the first R, the different emotions that you're feeling before you get into that situation, or even when you're in that situation, and then understand why you're feeling that, it'll give you an opportunity to then better express it, to the E on that, to label and express it, the L and E for ruler, right? So it's not a bad thing to do that. I would also note that Renee Brown encourages us to have those moments of true vulnerability if it's something where we're really feeling like our heart is in something, and maybe along those lines of scarf, right? Maybe we feel like we haven't been treated fairly, or maybe there's a feeling of a lack of autonomy in the work that we were doing. It's okay, but also to offer up a reason for it too later on, to say, hey, like I was very much in a feeling of distrust, or maybe I was very much in a feeling of isolation, or I was maybe very much in a feeling of pain with a decision that was made. And it's not that I didn't respect what choice you made, but it's that I was really caught up in that emotion. And I want you to know that I'm aware of it and I'm handling it. One of my other things that I would add to it too is one of my favorite authors recently, her name's Amber Ray, encourages us to journal it out and to invite your emotion to the table. And I know that might sound a little silly, like, all right, anger, tell me what you're feeling, right? But in those moments, before we get into that, when we know that there might be those emotions bubbling up in us, just as we are naturally, or just if it's contextual in the situation, try to identify it before and suss out why it is you're feeling what you're feeling, and journal it out and say, anger, what are you here to teach me? Anger, what is it that I can learn from you? I think I've had many of those moments where I've almost not cried, but I've definitely gotten emotional with my previous director, who I admired in his role, but I had to really start to get good with my emotions and say, the reason why I'm feeling upset is that I'm actually hurt. And why am I hurt? I feel like because I'm not being involved in the ways I'd hoped to be. And so when I was able to journal it out that way, it made it so that that next meeting with him was not as emotional in the sense of a negative reaction, but something that was more assertive, where I could say, I feel like I'm not meeting the expectations that I thought I would have for this job. Some of the tasks and roles I thought I'd be performing aren't really matching up, and how do we work through that? So again, I have additional resources at the end that it can help you with that too, but
Cool.
I applaud you for having the courage to share that.
All right. Hey, Wayne. So this is Cheryl. So we do have a couple of entries I'd like to share with you quickly. I know we're wrapping up for the evening and Craig wants us to end on time, and I can see that.
So just real quick, Carol,
Sure.
do we get cut off at 7:15?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Nope, we're
Sorry.
good. Thank you for that, though. No, it's good question. So just a couple of entries. One was from Ken Nixon. He had to jump off the meeting, but he wanted to let you know, Wayne, that thank you for the insightful variant on exercising emotional intelligence. Certainly an important element of PM success. Here.
Agreed.
And then
Yes,
Stephen
hear,
Hill
hear.
submitted, and this is to Colleen sharing of what happened with her at work and having emotions so deep that words couldn't quite express. His response was, WWSD, what would Spock do? Right?
Oh,
Love
yeah.
it. And he says, I try to recognize the emotions, but try not to let them rule my actions, especially when it comes to matters of pride over common sense. So there you have it. Words of wisdom from Spock.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
agreed. And I would
Spock
add
was
to it.
half human.
Right?
Thank you. You caught what I was about to say. Yeah. So I was going to say he was an effective manager of his emotions. Really.
Right. There
And
you
that's
go.
what I would say in turn to that for you, Colleen. Like it's all about managing it and
Right.
getting more comfortable with it and being okay with those moments. I mean, we're human. We are innately at the core of our brain. We're emotional people. It's okay. But I think culturally, societally, we've really moved away from this idea that emotions can be a strength. They're often seen as a weakness. And in actuality, when we're able to connect with others across those emotions, we actually have deeper relationships and more positive outcomes in our lives. So it's a moment of strength, not weakness in my mind. And I think it was courageous of you to do so.
Yep.
All
Here, here.
right. Well,
Here.
Okay, well, hey, we are at 7:15, and I think there were a couple of things that we wanted to wrap up with. Wayne, did you have something to say? You just kind of mentioned.
Yeah, I just wanted to just have one final thought for you. So we didn't want to turn this into a poll or anything, but I really think it's important to try to commit to some of these skills. And so just for your own personal edification, just think of one thing that you can commit to for improving how you manage your own or others' emotions and try to practice it. Maybe it's the feelings wheel, maybe it's identifying SCARF, but whatever it is, really try to commit to it because that's the key to success. So that's what I will leave you with, and know that the PowerPoint presentation, including additional references and resources that are not going to be shown here, will be available to you after this presentation.
That's great. Wayne, thank you very much. Cheryl, there was some other information for getting the PDF.
Right. Yeah. So in your handout section, for those who are attending, you have an option that looks like a little folded paper on your right navigation bar. And if you click on that, you'll see that there are actually 4 handouts. You'll have copies of the annual meeting presentation, the May dinner presentation, Wayne's fabulous permission to feel presentation, and then also instructions on how to go into the reporting system to report the PDU that you earned for this evening. I did want to mention, after talking with Wayne, we really decided in reality, we said initially, wow, this really seems to align with strategic and leadership components of the talent triangle, but honestly, it's technical too, because there are definitely some technical elements of this for us to apply. So I would recommend that you could probably use all 3 as needed. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That concludes the May events. Thank you all for participating. Appreciate the new format, all the work that went into it from the communications team. Wayne, thank you for your presentation. It was tremendous, and look forward to talking to you guys next month. All right, have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.